Hello, I'm Rick Joyner, and this is a special bulletin on current events. And we recently put out a special bulletin on the internet called National Health Scare, and it probably has generated more interest, more traffic. It is going all over the place. I'm hearing of third and fourth generation copies already, and it's hardly been out there more than a week. But I think this is definitely a good thing, a very important thing. It is one of the most important issues I believe we're going to face, maybe have faced yet in our lifetime. And in some ways, as far as a national issue, and it's really heating up. But if there was a lot of pressure to ram that legislation through Congress to try to get it done before the end of July, before they went on their August break. To me, that would have been the biggest disaster ever in our nation. But we also, as there was such a rush to read the bill and answer it, the brief that we put on that special bulletin I received from the Liberty Counsel but it was done by a reporter who just did a really rushed job. And in getting into it, since the Congress went on break and they did not pass that legislation, but they're planning to as soon as they come back, and they're hoping to get it done by the middle of September. It is still a crucial emergency situation in our country that this thing be done right. And we felt, in doing some examination, going in a little deeper into that brief that was on the special bulletin, that some of it just wasn't accurate and needed to be corrected. And Matt Staver, who's the head of the Liberty Counsel, decided he wanted to do it himself. And he's not only a lawyer, he's a dean of a top law school. He's a tremendous guy. So we'll have Matt's briefing on the details of that bill, which we're also going to circulate. And one thing we don't want to do is use fear. We don't want to use exaggeration or misstatements or anything else. Truth is our most basic commodity, and we've got to stand on the truth, and we've got to get the truth. And if there are some things that were misstated or overstated there, when we get the thorough investigation, we're going to go back and say, look, this was not accurate. This was whatever. But, and to some degree, I'm not that sorry about it. I'm sorry. I'm not more sorry. But when you rush something or try to rush something like the Congress was doing, it was an emergency. Everybody was in a rush mode. And this is one of the most basic questions we need to ask. Why the rush? What is the hurry? Why would they possibly want to run something through Congress without giving anybody, even the congressmen who are going to sign off on it, a chance to read it? Not only read it, this is something that is going to radically impact the life of every single American. And I'm not just talking about have an impact. It's going to radically impact your life in a number of ways. And why not take the time to do this right, to consider all of the consequences of all of these measures that are being put in there? To me, the worst madness of all, and it is a madness, is this rush that is being put on it. This is too important for us to just cram something through. And it doesn't make any sense. Carl Jung, the associate of Sigmund Freud, one of the truly pioneering psychoanalysts in the world, who, by the way, had quite a different view than Sigmund Freud on some basic things, but an extraordinary man. He once made a statement that really interested me, and when he said, hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil. And looking back on my own life, I feel that some of the greatest mistakes I've ever made was when I had to make decisions under pressure. And one thing I've learned to resist, we have a lot of real estate dealings in the ministry. And any time pressure was put on me to do something quick, You've got to, if you're going to do this, you need to do it now because somebody else is coming to look at this property and they're going to jump on it. Whenever I get that, I have learned to back up and stop and say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it under pressure. Now, we put out that first bulletin that way because we felt like we had 3 days. We had to go with, we didn't have time to thoroughly examine it, and I think we're going to find there were some mistakes made because of that. But in that situation, we were reacting to a rush. Everybody was under pressure. Well, we've got a few weeks now. We're going to be a little calmer about it, but it is still an emergency situation, trust me. And we need to look at some of the most basic issues. And I made some statements in that some thought was, just ratcheting up the rhetoric. When I made the statements about how I believe Hitler and Stalin would have loved to have had a bill like this to do what they want to do as far as euthanasia and all. I am not at all apologizing for that statement. That is where I believe this is headed, that bill is headed. I am adamant about that. I can see it. Once I got back, when I put out that bulletin, I wrote it on vacation. I was on the edge of internet coverage where I had about 1/10 the speed of dial-up, if you could imagine that. I couldn't even download the law to read. I had to trust the brief that was sent to me and all. And I knew it was an emergency with them trying to ram this thing through in just a few days. And but there are some elements. There are gates of hell that could be opened that could be the worst hell ever released into our nation. Now, do I think this is their purpose? This is their intent? I really don't. I really don't think it was Hitler's or Stalin's intent when they started out either. I think things, once you open a gate, stuff comes in. Things change and they just start sliding downhill. Best thing to do is don't open that gate of hell. Gate of hell is where hell gets access. We don't want to do that. I think one of the main ways, what Carl Jung said about hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil. I think rushing something like this through is going to open one of the biggest gates of hell ever into our nation. And then think about this. Aren't most of those congressmen and senators lawyers? I think about 2/3 or more are lawyers. Isn't one of the most basic things they teach in law school, you read anything you're going to sign, anything you put your name to? Isn't that like Law 101? Now, how much more, if they're going to read any contract, study it, think of its implications, how much more should they read laws they're making? How much more should they be determined to really understand anything they're going to vote on, which is putting their signature on it? And to me, if they abandon that most basic principle of law, how could we ever trust them to be our Congress, to be our representatives as congressmen or senators? And I believe anybody who signs on to any of these bills without reading them should be held accountable, which means we don't vote them back into office. They are not representing us. They are not looking out for our interests if they do that. You want your lawyer, you give them your contracts to read them, find out what you're signing on to see, where there are potential problems for you in this contract, what is in your interest, what are not in your interest. How much more these laws they pass in Congress? I tell you, if there's nothing else, call your congressman and insist that you're going to call them to account. You're going to find out if they read the bill that they signed off on, and that you're going to hold them accountable if they don't. That way they're not going to be able to say down the road too that, well, I just didn't know what was in there. Well, you should have known. That's basic. Those who are the greatest in any field are those who do the basics best. This is basic. This is fundamental. Not only do we need to know what's in that bill, we need to think it through. What are the implications? What is going to happen down the road if we put this measure in there? There are huge consequences to these things, to people's lives. We've got to back off and take our time. Insist. Call your congressman, write them, do it every day. Insist that they represent you the way you voted for them to do it. Thank you.